Welcome back, 365 Sports. Evan Abrams from the Action Network. And we have Brett McMurphy on from Action Network all the time.
Love it.
Now we've got Evan on. And Evan, first of all, let's talk about the new things that you're doing over there at Action Network and the columns that you've written,
Sure.
and the different things, because it's very diverse. Your work is got a lot of different things to it. So I read it all. I'm on Action Network every day. Thrilled to have you on the show. So just kind of tell the people everything that you've got going on and where they can find your stuff.
Yeah, sure. So Evan Abrams, I've been at the Action Network since 2018, about when it was founded. I do pretty much all the sports. I'm the director of research at the company, but I've worn a lot of different hats, been there a little while. So you can just find my work by searching my name on Google. I have an author page, has all my videos, has all my podcasts. I do 2 or 3 NFL podcasts a week, and I do a bunch of articles basically looking at profitable betting systems, betting notes, betting trends, betting information, kind of things that let's say most people don't think about, or some interesting topics from either our Action Labs data, which goes about 25 years back in terms of total lines, and some of my personal databases. For example, in the NFL, I've got every backup quarterback in the last 20 years and kind of how they've performed, certain fun things like that. So Evan Abrams, you can find my stuff there.
All right. I can't wait to go look into the deep performances of Anthony Wright, former. No, it's all the numbers there. That was the first one that popped to my head. Josh, that should be the Josh Johnson section right there.
Yeah, of course.
The Josh Johnson section. Okay. Let's start off with talking about the ACC Alphas in Florida State and with Clemson. And how they have both started off so poorly. There's a lot of noise outside both the programs about stuff that the players can't control. But clearly, I do think that at least in Tallahassee, they're hearing it. That I know because, full disclosure, I'm an alum, so I get the newsletters. But they both started off really badly. Clemson, thankfully for Clemson, they've only played one game against the best team in the country, but even still, it looked bad. What is your thought on their future for this year? Are these two teams maybe not obviously out of contention in the ACC? Florida State's 0-2 in the conference already, so they need help. They need to win them all and get some help on the way out. But are they kind of out of contention in your mind right now for the playoff?
So let's talk about the odds for the conference and kind of work backwards to what happened over the weekend. At the moment, the ACC odds have Miami at the top, followed by Clemson and Louisville, and then SMU and NC State. Florida State entered the year at 3-1 as the favorites to win the conference. They are now 50-1. Now, I don't think that's actually possible, but I think it's worth noting that their schedule going forward isn't the easiest. They still have more bumps in the road. And some of these games early in the year showed optimism when there wasn't there. So I don't necessarily think Florida State, even at 50-1, is something you should be looking at. I think Clemson is more interesting. Me and the Action Network and other people kind of liked Clemson in the preseason to maybe win the conference, possibly even make the playoff. Now, that opening game against Georgia was going to be what it was going to be. But at 3-1, I think there is value there considering what the number opened at and kind of where we are now. Let's just talk about Florida State for a second, because really what they put themselves through their first 2 games kind of made some history. So double-digit favorites in the season so far are 89-3 straight up. Now, that is teams favored by 10 points or more. Florida State already has 2 of those 3 losses, which every other team kind of on one track. Florida State needs to get back on the track. Just some unbelievable history in terms of that. And then you kind of look at this. Losing both their openers as double-digit favorites only happened now 3 times in the last 40 years and hasn't happened since Baylor in 2017. And if you even think about preseason expectations a little bit more, their win total was 9.5. They've got to now go undefeated to go over. So things have definitely started on one side, and I think they're going to obviously win some games, but I'm not sure they're going to get to where they need to go. And think of it like this. Just look at the conference. Conference already has 5 losses with FSU's 2, Virginia Tech, Stanford, Clemson, and their 3 losses as a favorite are the most of any conference in line game so far. So things just not starting out on the right foot, but plenty of seasons to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's gonna be wild. All right, before we get into some of like more of the game stuff, I wanted to talk to you about Billy Napier as well, because this, like, if Samford beats Florida this week, he might as well pack it. Like, he might as well just walk from the field at Ben Hill Griffin to his office at Ben Hill Griffin and have somebody go get him some boxes at a liquor store because it's done. But he is in a lot of trouble, and I don't see them with it. Like, Florida State's schedule is tough. The Gators' schedule is the definition of tough. It's hellacious. It's ridiculous. It's even though, as a Florida State alum, I enjoy watching them get tortured, and maybe not this much. Like, this is like where you'd be like, okay, look, I was in for them getting beaten, but this is cruel and unusual. But Billy Napier ahead, possibly with DJ Lagway at quarterback. If Graham Mertz comes back, Graham Mertz is probably going to be back in because Billy's doubled down on him, unless DJ's just that good. What do you see as the odds that he keeps his job, and where in the season do you think he has to get through to finish this year?
Yeah, so I think some perspective on what Florida was supposed to be is a little bit helpful. But before I start, there's a rule in betting. You know, you're supposed to win games where you're a double-digit favorite, but you're also definitely not supposed to lose games where there is no line on the game right now, and there won't be till closer to game time because of your opponent. So Billy Napier and Florida absolutely have to win this game this week against Samford. We get that. We understand it. But think about their win total for a second. It was 4.5 entering the season, the lowest since at least 2005. We don't even really have data for the last time in terms of win totals it was this low. So the way it started shouldn't have been a super surprise. I mean, think about it. They were 250 to 1 to win it all entering the year. They were just 50 to 1 like 3 or 4 years ago. So where they've gone, I think expectations kind of what they are. Now, in terms of the quarterbacks, I don't think we really saw anything out of either of them that looked great, right? 122 yards, 2 interceptions. It just nothing looked great against Miami. The score should have been a lot worse. But if you think of Napier in general, 3-8 against the spread as a favorite. When he's supposed to win the games, he's either losing them or it's extremely close. And then you think about, okay, last 20 years, 7 Florida head coaches. Only Muschamp is worse against the spread. So he's not covering when he should either. Mm-hmm. And you talked about the strength of schedule. The hardest strength of schedule of any team in the country in terms of opponent rank. Their opponent average rank of all the games is 30, if you think about that, which is almost insane. And the top four hardest are also obviously in the SEC, but Florida still has to go way through the gauntlet. So in my opinion, they're going to give him a little time. You assume he wins this week, and you assume at some point they get close to that 4-5 win zone. If they finish with 2 wins, I think he probably gets ousted, but I think there are some expectation levels here. And as a bettor, to be honest with you, I kind of hope the games get a little, I hope Samford is a little tight because I think it creates some value. There's going to be some wild numbers with Florida going forward if they don't look better. So, there might be some value there.
Yeah. It's a very tense situation in the swamp right now. Yeah. And their fans don't care how hard the schedule is. Like that, like, oh, well, you know what? We're in the SEC. We pound our chest about it, so let's be about it. I think that's the general attitude of the fans. This week, Michigan and Texas. I wish this was last year's Michigan versus this year's Texas, or last year, like that the rosters, because it would have been a much better game in my estimation. I feel like Texas can win by 2 scores. What do the odds say?
Yeah, this is actually super fascinating, and only for one reason. It actually moved pretty hard this morning. So this is the most ticketed game of any game this weekend in college football. It's getting the most tickets from bettors. Everybody wants a little bit of action here. So for the game to move from Texas -7.5 down to the 7, which it currently sits, definitely took a little bit of a push. Texas is getting basically all the public money with all the public bets, with the money about even. So that is kind of what brought the line back to 7. I would be shocked for it to go below that 7 mark and leave the books a little bit exposed. But in terms of the line itself, there is some big history here because, how many times does Michigan close at 7.5 in the Big House? So it's the biggest underdog in any game since 22 against Ohio State. It's also the biggest underdog in terms of home since 2019. So been a while for the Wolverines. And then you think about this. Michigan's only closed as a 7-point home underdog just 5 times since 2000. 0-5 in those games. Their last win in that spot, 1995 against Ohio State. It has been a long time since Michigan has been, I guess, doubted in this sense. And that probably talks a little bit more to Texas and what Texas did last week against Colorado State, the great game they put in. Also, Michigan, you think about it, right? They didn't play great against Fresno. 30-10, it was kind of close. I even had some money line tickets live on Fresno. I thought there was a moment there, but I don't think they looked fantastic. So that's kind of the, and then you look, one other thing I think is pretty interesting, the preseason game of the year lines, which in the preseason, if everyone doesn't know, some of these sportsbook put out the biggest games and they put out preseason lines. So we get to kind of see, okay, once the line comes out a week or so before the game, what it is compared to that. This was Pick'em. Mm-hmm. So this was Pick'em, and it was only a month ago when one game's been played. So I do kind of feel like Michigan has a little value. I took them at 7.5. You know, obviously under 7, I don't see anything there. Is Texas supposed to win the game? Of course. Do bettors think Texas are going to win and cover? They do, but I kind of like Michigan's defense. I think, and their run game. I think they're going to try to keep this close, and I'm a numbers guy. So when I see 7.5, I always see a situation where what's the possibility? So I like that number, and I think they could keep it close.
All right, let's go through some of these big games of the week. Sure. Now, because there's some very interesting ones. We'll stay in the Big Ten and I guess the former Big 12 since Texas is out. But Colorado, Nebraska, completely contrasting styles, finesse versus power. This is in Nebraska. This game should be pretty close. You get the Matt Rule year 2 bump. What are your thoughts on this?
So just looking at the line in general, last night Nebraska was 7.5. It is now down to 6.5, which to me, a massive move, big move, especially when you talk about the total moving down. It was 60.5, now 55.5. I want to bet Colorado. When you talk about these numbers and this size of a number, and you talk about what Deion Sanders has brought to the table, so they've been together now 13 games. In 5 of those games, they've been favorites, and in 8, they've been underdogs. As a favorite, they're 4-1 straight up, and as underdogs, they're 1-7. It hasn't been good. And that only win came against TCU when we all thought everything was going to be roses. But I personally kind of like this number. I think they're extremely talented. And again, we talk about that Michigan-Texas line. We'll talk about this Colorado-Nebraska line. I like the half at 7.5. Now down to 6.5. I kind of want to wait and see. Now, the thing I think of is live betting is going to be tilted towards Colorado. Everyone knows the team. Everyone wants to bet on the team. Everyone wants to jump on the wagon, especially if the game's close. I think Colorado is going to get a little bit of a bump because people are going to go that direction. So if it rolls back to 7, I think that's the bet in pregame. If not, I think you just got to wait it out.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, that's the one of the ones I was just like, I'm picking Nebraska to win, but bet wise, I wouldn't to me, it's too I don't know whose style's going to win out and win in this game, right?
Yeah.
Because there's just going to be moments. It's somebody, like you said, hard to follow. I like that you confirmed what I was thinking.
I mean, but you also think about it. This last year we saw this exact same game at this exact same time. So trying to compare those rosters, right? I mean, 36-14. So I think there's a little bit of precedence. So I felt the 7.5 was a little much based off of what we've seen. So probably why the move came down to under a touchdown.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Oregon and Boise State. Boise State, Ashton Genty, big offensive presence. Oregon tripped up a little bit last week. What did the line say about how they feel about Oregon?
This whole line and this whole situation is all tied to Idaho, and I don't think I ever would have thought that going into this one. But it is what it is. We were all on our phones. We were all staring at this one, thinking that it was going to be the biggest upset in college football history. Got lines back to the 70s and 80s. We hadn't had one as big as that. So seeing that and reacting off of this next line is exactly what happened. It was 24-24.5 entering that Idaho game. Now we're about 19 and a half. So it's really moved about 5 points, and I think it's moved too much. I do like Oregon in this spot. I would listen, when you're talking about key numbers, I prefer that 17 range because but I'm not going to complain with anything under 20. And Boise State has some interesting history because when you first look at this line, you say to yourself, man, when was the last time Boise State got this many points? And usually it's not because either they're up to the competition or they're playing their conference opponents. So interesting nonetheless, at a spread of 14.5 or higher, which it's definitely going to close at, it'd be their largest line as an underdog since 2001. So wow. It has been a long time. And here's a good one. It was against South Carolina and Lou Holtz. So a fun one nonetheless. But to me, even if you look at the box score, Oregon and Idaho, it just wasn't close. First down, 31-10. Total yards, 47-217. Even time of possession was only about 20 minutes in Oregon's direction. So Oregon usually does good in this spot. Last 20 years, our Action Labs database, 4 most profitable teams as a favorite: Oklahoma State, Penn State, Ohio State, Oregon. They're all favorites in week 2 as well for fun, but I like the Ducks here.
All right. Tennessee and NC State. NC State's they're a little rascally. Are they rascally enough to cover and maybe win?
So this one opened at 5.5 August 28th, long time ago. Now 9.5. So that's kind of the direction we've seen when NC State struggles in their opener. Now you get Tennessee and getting all this love. I've been riding the Josh Heupel train in the first half for now almost, it seems like 18 months for me. He is 41-17-2 first half ATS, 22-7-1 first half ATS away from home. I do kind of like that spot for him. To me, full game, I can't pick it. I'm not going to go either way full game. I do think that 5.5 first half under that 6 is an interesting number for Tennessee, and I'm going to play the over. Tennessee puts up the numbers they want. NC State is not the team we saw last week. I think we can see some points.
Yeah, I agree with you. Grayson McCall, like you can't nobody's going to be listing him with Shadur Sanders and Carson Beck when it comes to the end of the year in the draft. No, but he's just that dude in college where it's like, all right, go make it up as you go. And he's kind of that way, which makes it hard to put your thumb on what NC State's going to be.
Yeah, and between him, Cam Rising, I want all these quarterbacks with experience, putting up points. It makes at least it's an angle for me to take.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll wrap with Cy-Hawk and the a game where I'm sure plenty of people are going to hit that under. Like they want to hit the under, they want to hit the under. Have things changed on that at all in your estimation where somebody might win on the over in this game?
Yeah, this has moved too far for my blood, even though this is a game that really I love it deep down in my soul. So the total opened 38.5, now down to 35. Okay. And Iowa unders. It's, even if you know nothing about college football or even betting, you've probably seen something about their punting or unders in their games. It was 21-6 entering last week, best mark in college football the last 3 years. We did get an Iowa over because they scored so many points. And the best part about it is, and I had to look it up, Iowa's never started 2-0 to the over in my database. It goes back 25 years. I can't find a time that's happened. So we might be in for something new. At 35, it's just way too low. If anything, I would be inclined to nibble on the over, but then wait live. If you get a punt or something like that, that's probably just going to crater, and I feel like we will see some points. My actual bet on the game is Iowa State at 3. That's the one I'm probably going to be looking for. I do think that they're a little underrated in that spot, and looking at the board right now, it looks like it's probably going to hang at 3, open to 2.5. So that's the angle. And then really Matt Campbell. He's been a cash cow as an underdog at 3+ points, 31-16, 66%, 5th best of any coach in the last 20 years. So I'm rolling with the Sykes.
All right. Evan Abrams, Action Network. Go check out those Action Labs database. Evan, let's do it again. This was so much fun and so informative. I'm a novice to betting. Like, I understand all the terms, but plus I live in Texas and can't. So, yeah. So, yeah. If the Adelsons get their way,
please.
Yeah. If they get their way. But Evan Abrams, Action Network with us. Evan, definitely we're going to do this again. Really enjoyed it. Awesome stuff. Go watch all of his podcasts. He'll have all this stuff on the NFL as well. Evan, thank you so much, man.
Yeah. Appreciate it. Fun time.
All right. Evan Abrams, Action Network. This is 365 Sports.